Hi everyone, today we are going to focus on the C, and when it says S, so the C has two different sounds. It says K and S. So the only time that a C can actually say S is when it's followed by an E, I, or a Y. So it's really important that you know this spelling rule and this reading rule so that you will be able to decode your words properly. All right, now we're gonna focus and we're gonna start with CIs. Okay, so this word says citric. And this is a great example word for helping you understand this rule, because we have two different C's here that say K. One says K and one says S. So this one says S because it's followed by an E, I, or a Y. So that's an I. But see, look, this one says K because it's not followed by an E, I, or a Y. Now, acacia. Now, we learned in another lesson, just a couple lessons ago, and we talked about CIs and when they are digraphs. So in this word, this is a digraph because look, it's followed by a vowel. Not always will that happen, but when you have a CI, you need to look for that. It doesn't matter for CEs or CYs, but for CIs, if you have a vowel following it and you're trying to decode a word, this could be a digraph. So just kind of look for that. And so see how this C right here is saying K because it's not followed by an E, I, or a Y. Okay, so this says bifacial. Look, we have a digraph here. Look, that's a vowel. So this is not going to say the sound because this is a digraph. But in this word, this says cedar. So I'm gonna try to do this. Actually on the recorder, Daniel just sneezed, so it's making us laugh. So I'm not sure if I can actually do this, but I really think it's important to have something that helps you remember. And so this is cedar, and this is saying because this is an E, I, or a Y. So we are, Daniel's still making me laugh, sorry. And because I'm singing into this camera. But, so that is the reason why that says cement. Look, that is saying because that is an E, I, or a Y. Okay, so right there. So this word says appreciably. Okay, so this is a digraph here. Now look at this word, civic, another great example of this saying S, this says K, but this says S because this is an E, I, or a Y. Okay, so, and you can do your own funny little thing that helps you remember, but if it helps you remember because you're hearing my silly voice, singing to you, it helps you to remember that. Okay, so now, anyways, so the same here also, if you have a CI at the beginning, it also helps you to know, well, that's probably not a digraph because the CI digraphs happen in the middle of the words when a sh sound for a digraph at the beginning of a word is an SH. So you pretty much know, and also they're not followed by vowels. So but typically if they're at the beginning, you don't even have to look for another vowel. Okay, so this says cinch. This is saying S because this is an E, I, or a Y. Cider, this is saying S because this is an E, I, or a Y. And acid, this is saying S because it's an E, I, or a Y. Now look, excel. This is a Latin root. So if you are understanding your Latin roots and you've studied your Latin roots, you're gonna be able to spell this sound a little bit better because this Latin root will go in lots of words with your chameleons. This is a chameleon. Okay, so we have placement. This is a base word with a suffix added on. So if you want s at the end of a word, you want to spell it with a CE. I'm going to say that again. Do you want to turn that down, honey? It's popping. You might want to stir it. So I'm going to say it again. If you want s at the end of a word, you want to spell it with a CE most of the time. I would say like 95% of the time, it needs to be spelled with a CE. Okay, so if you spell it with an S, that means it's plural. Single S's almost always mean it's plural. So if you spell it with an SE, that typically says Z. So at the end of a word is spelled with a CE, and this is added onto it. Okay, so concede. Now this is another Latin root. This is a chameleon. That E is making that C say S. And that, look, that is making, that just says K. Because most C's say K, unless it's followed by an E, I, or a Y. Okay, this says conceal. Same thing here. This C is saying S because this is an E, I, or a Y. But look, this is not changing because this is not an E, I, or a Y. Okay, so necessary. See, that E is forcing that C to say S. So I underline this word because I think it is so necessary for you to really study this rule. It is absolutely important for you to understand when the C sound changes. It will really, really, really help your reading and your spelling, especially your reading. Okay, so we have deception. That E is changing that to say S. Renounce. So CE at the end. Now look at this. Remember, if you want S at the end of a word, spell it CE almost always. Sacrifice. See all these words that end in CE? Okay, bounce. Device, CE. Place. So if you want S at the end of a word, spell it with a CE. Price. Spence. See, that E is changing that C to say S. That E is changing that C to say S. This E is changing this C to say S. Okay? So this word says enlace, or enlist. So I've heard it both ways. Ace. So now, which is really interesting, this is a silent E syllable right here. And this E is actually doing two different things in this word. It's making this C say S, and it's also making this A be long. Okay? So that's what that E is doing. So E's at the end of words, they are silent almost always. Not always, but almost always. If you see an E at the end and you don't know the word, let it be silent, okay? So this says centrist. See, here's your Latin root right here. That E is making that C say S. This says centra. Now this is unusual, and I put this in here for you to see. This is one of those exceptions to the rules, and this would be a true sight word that you would do. You wouldn't be able to spell this word unless you studied this word. So this E is actually turning to the schwa sound. Okay, so, and we know it's not really in our language because of this. It's in the Latin origin because this is a Latin root. So deuce. That CE right here, that E is making that C say S. If you want a C, the S sound at the end of a word, put a CE, okay? Cedars. Now, this you might think that maybe I misspelled the words. This is a cedar tree. So this says cedars. So right here, if you see that, that is a root. Okay, so it means to give away. So here we have suffixes added onto that. In ER means a person that gives away, and then your S, your plural S, means more than one person giving away. So that's another way to spell cedars. It's a different meaning. It's a homophone. Okay. Also, the C, this E is making this C say S. This says affluence. This CE, see, if you want at the end of the word, spell it with a CE, but look, this E is making this C say S. This says licensee. Now, I would say 85% of the time, if hearing E at the end, it's actually spelled with a Y, but look, we have a double E here that is also can be spelled with an E. So you can have the E sound. Also, this is how you spell licensee, but also you can spell licensee with an S-E-E. So they're both considered correct. This is the most common way to spell licensee. But just in case, we have some people that spell it with an S-E out there, it's out there. Defiance, that C is saying because of this E. Now we're gonna go over the Y's. The Y affects the C. So if you have a CY, the C says S. Now if you have a Y that's in the middle of a word, most often it will identify it that it could be a Greek word. And so this says, right here, I would look at this and say that is probably a Greek word. And it is. So this says cynosure. Now look how this is open, and Y's when they are in the middle of a word and you can identify them as Greek like at the beginning, not the very beginning, because Y's at the very beginning they say the Y sound, they're not a vowel, they're a consonant. And so, but Y's kind of in the middle right there, or in the middle right in here, but not at the end. Y's at the end typically say E, or they say I once in a while, but most of the time they say E. But you can't really identify a Y at the end of a word as Greek like you can. That doesn't mean you don't have Greek words that end in Y, but you can't identify them because there's so many English words that have Y's at the end. So, but this one is a Greek word. We can tell that because of this Y, and it says, and see it's open because this N is going to come to the end, so it's going to say cynosure, okay? And this one says encyclopedia. See, this Y is affecting this C and it's saying S, but see how it's saying Psy? So it will either say it's I, long I sound, or it's short is sound, depending on if it's an open syllable or if it's a closed syllable. Here it would be an open syllable. So this says karyocyte. Now look at this one. Well, why isn't this Y? You would not typically think, is that a Greek word? But here, look, you can see that this is in the middle of a Greek combining form. And this is part of a Greek word, but it would be at the end. So this one would be a little bit harder to tell, oh, is that a Greek word? But this part is Greek. This tells you this is Greek. So, and then look, this E is going to jump over and make this long, and it's going to say I. So, and it's going to force this C to say sight. Right here it says lascivous, and see that Y is changing that C to say S. Now let's decode this word together. Now we have the Y here. This is a Greek word, and we have a Y and an A. And we know we don't have a vowel team that is a YA, so we know that that's going to break. See, we have our vowels right there. We're gonna break them right down the middle. So the Y is gonna go here, the A is gonna go here, and so see right here, we have an A and an O. Daniel, can you see this really well? Okay, we have an A and an O right here. And so this N is going to go to the end. So this A is going to be an open A, and it's not accented, so because see, look how big it is. It's going to say it's schwa sound. Open A say schwa sound if it's unaccented. So this says so this says Now we talked about open syllables, and this will be an open syllable right here, and it will say no. No, cyano. And then this says Genesis, like in the Bible, cyanogenesis. And I thought this was a really interesting word because it talks all about, it's about plants. And I thought it was interesting that it was connected to a book in the Bible because that talks about the creation of the world. So now we have Simogonine. So this C is saying because of that vowel. So this says cogency. This Y is making this C say S. So if you want C to be at the end of a word, we do not spell it C-E. That says S. C-E's are silent at the end of words, almost always. So if you want C to be at the end of a word, you spell it C-Y. You don't spell it S-Y because most likely that will say Z, okay? So this, now look at this word. We have 3 C's right here. And this word says cyclic. And it breaks right here. See how this C has a consonant right here. So it's saying the K sound. This doesn't have an E, I, or Y right here. So it's going to say K. But look, this is a Y. So it's making that say S. Okay? Sima, that Y is making that say S. So this says simani. Now, right here with this, I use this as an example because I just told you that E at the end are silent. But there are exceptions to the rule. This would be a true sight word right here, and this says E at the end. If you don't know the word though, you would not read this as E. You would study this. But most of the time, it will not be silent, but I put that in there so you can see an example of when it does say E. I see that Y is making that C say S. This I thought was a really interesting word. So this is your Greek combining form. You're identifying the Y here, and this Y is saying S, making this say, this is cyclopean, and this Y is making this say S. This is not, so this says K, because this is not an E, I, or Y, but this is a Greek combining form that stands for cycle. And typically if you see an A-N here, you will know that they're talking about a person or a people or something relating to people. So I thought that that was kind of a fun thing to put in there. This says Lacey, C-Y. If you want C to be at the end of a word, you spell it C-Y, okay? Citons. So see how this is open? So it's going to say the open I sound. See how it's at the beginning? So this is saying S because of that Y. This is jouncy, and that is saying S because, this is C is saying S because of this Y. So I think it is so necessary that you study this, look it over, review it, memorize this rule, because once you memorize this rule, because you're going to go on to more rules. Once you have this down, wow, it'll be crazy how much better your reading and your spelling will become. All right, take care, and we'll see you again.